My ranch stretched across 300 acres of rolling Colorado countryside, nestled just at the edge of the pine-shadowed Rockies. It was the kind of land that had been in my family for generations, passed down from frontier men to veterans and finally to me. After 25 years in military intelligence, retiring as a senior officer in Joint Special Operations Command, I'd come back to live out the rest of my life in peace. Or so I thought. The HOA, Pine Creek Valley Estates, was a relatively new addition to the area, a master plan community that had slowly expanded to the border of my land. I hadn't cared much about them, nor had I joined, since my land was technically outside the boundaries. But then came Karen Dunwood. Karen was the self-proclaimed president of the HOA, a woman in her early 50s with the bearing of a dictator and the perfume of 1,000 roses. She took her role with all the gravity of a head of state. To her, pine cones on lawns were war crimes, and a mailbox 2 inches too tall was a federal offense. When the HOA expanded its jurisdictional boundaries for aesthetic continuity, Karen decided that my land, though not a part of the HOA, should still abide by their rules. Just to keep the valley beautiful, she said, with a tight smile and eyes that could pierce titanium. It began with letters. First requests, then citations. My barn was too visually disruptive. My gravel road was non-compliant. My American flag, raised every dawn, was unapproved signage. I ignored them, and that made her furious. Still, life on the ranch remained mostly undisturbed, until the sky cracked open one October afternoon. I was mending a fence along the southern pasture when I saw it, a shrieking roar overhead, too low, too fast. I looked up to see a small private aircraft spiraling, black smoke trailing like a comet's tail. It was going down fast and heading straight toward the edge of my property. The crash shook the ground. A column of fire and smoke bloomed into the sky. I called emergency services immediately and raced on my ATV to the scene. The wreckage lay just past the property line, partially on HOA-controlled land. I was the first on site. The pilot was unconscious but alive. There were 2 others, one dead, the other barely breathing. I didn't hesitate. I rendered aid, pulling them from the flaming remains. I didn't stop until the paramedics and fire crew arrived. And then, in the smoke and confusion, Karen appeared, wearing a power suit and high heels, as if she'd been waiting for an opportunity to impose herself. She marched up to the investigators. "This is HOA property," she snapped. "You need authorization to be here." I approached. "These are federal investigators, Karen. There's a plane crash and they're doing their job." She crossed her arms. "Without proper HOA clearance, I'm afraid I can't let them proceed." I stared at her. "You don't have that authority." She raised an eyebrow. "Try me." What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly comprehend, was that I wasn't just a rancher. I still held a high-level clearance. I still had contacts in federal intelligence. And if she thought this was over, she was wrong. Dead wrong. The crash site was cordoned off by the sheriff's department, but Karen wasn't letting that stop her. The next morning, she had erected a chain-link fence around the area and posted a laminated sign that read, "Do not enter. Private property. HOA Mandate 47B." I watched from my ATV, chewing on a toothpick. An NTSB agent named O'Malley stood on the other side of the fence, incredulous. "Is she serious?" he asked.
"Deadly." He sighed.
"We've got orders to secure the wreckage." FAA flagged it for immediate investigation. "Something's off with that crash." "I'll handle it." I walked right up to the fence and opened the gate. Karen, who had been perched on a lawn chair watching like a hawk, stormed over. "You are in violation of HOA protocols," she screeched. "Karen," I said slowly, "this investigation is sanctioned by federal order. If you obstruct again, you could face federal charges." She laughed. "Please. I know my rights, and I have every authority to protect our community." I took out my ID, not my driver's license, but my federal clearance card, the one that still had my rank and classification. Her eyes widened. "Do you know what this means?" I asked, stepping closer. I can call in a classified response team in under 10 minutes. You want helicopters over your cul-de-sac? Her smug mask cracked just a hair. But she didn't relent. You'll regret this, she hissed, retreating. I knew then it wasn't over. She saw herself as a queen defending her kingdom, even if it meant war. And I was the threat she couldn't control. 2 nights later, someone cut the NTSB's security cables. A drone monitoring the crash was disabled. Data from the black box, still intact, was stolen before analysis could begin. Only one person had been that close.
Karen.
I contacted an old colleague, call sign Reaper. Ex-NSA. He owed me a favor. Run surveillance, I said. Quietly. Within 48 hours, we had footage of Karen handing off a hard drive to a man in a black SUV. The plate traced back to a private contractor known for corporate espionage. Something bigger was happening. Karen had overplayed her hand. She wasn't just a power-hungry neighborhood tyrant anymore. She was actively interfering in a federal investigation. And if she thought she could hide behind HOA technicalities, she had underestimated the reach of people like me. I contacted Agent Elena Mendez, an old colleague from Homeland Security. When she saw the footage, she went pale. That man is Victor Drevko. He used to run Black Ops for the Eastern Bloc. Now, he's a mercenary. What's he doing in a Colorado suburb? She looked up. That plane, there was a witness on board. A defector. Someone Drevko wanted silenced. Suddenly, it made sense. The crash wasn't an accident. It was a hit. And Karen? She was just a useful idiot, too obsessed with power to realize she was helping a killer. With warrants secured, we began a deeper investigation. The NTSB quietly extracted the wreckage under cover of night. Karen, unaware, continued to parade her authority. But I had a plan. I filed a formal complaint with the county, citing overreach, obstruction, and illegal modification of public land. Then I attended the next HOA meeting, uninvited. Karen was mid-sentence when I walked in. You're not welcome here, she snapped. Actually, I said, as a neighboring landowner, I have the right to attend under Colorado Open Meetings law. I handed out copies of the surveillance footage. Gasps rippled across the room. She tampered with evidence from a plane crash, I said. Aiding a known international criminal. Karen's face went pale. Lies. Fabrications. But the damage was done. The board voted unanimously to suspend her authority pending investigation. She stormed out. But the real fight was just beginning. Karen didn't go quietly. The night after her suspension, someone set fire to my hay barn. Luckily, I'd anticipated retaliation. The sprinklers and fire barriers kicked in, containing the blaze before it could spread to the livestock shelters. But the message was clear. This was personal now. I doubled down on security. Reaper and I installed high-range motion cameras, infrared sensors, and 24-hour surveillance drones. What started as a neighborhood spat had evolved into a full-scale operation. And then came the sabotage. My irrigation system was rerouted. Livestock fencing was deliberately weakened. My horses spooked one night and broke through, vanishing into the surrounding woods. It took me 2 days to find them, shaken but unharmed. That was the last straw. I called Elena and gave her the go-ahead. She filed an emergency authorization request, backed by Reaper's digital evidence. The DOJ expedited a warrant. The FBI moved at dawn. Karen Dunwood was arrested on multiple federal charges: obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and aiding a known foreign agent. She screamed as agents led her from her home, still wrapped in her silk robe, manicured fingers flailing. I am the HOA. I am the law here. But the only answer she got was the click of handcuffs. Victor Drevko, meanwhile, had gone to ground. But the leak in Karen's home gave us his drop point. A storage facility 2 towns over. Inside, they found encrypted files, burner phones, and a list of future targets. One of them was a U.S. senator. 3 weeks later, Drevko was captured trying to cross into Arizona disguised as a Canadian trucker. The defector, who had survived the crash, was placed into deep cover. His intel helped dismantle a ring responsible for trafficking data, arms, and people across multiple borders. The national news picked it up. HOA scandal unravels espionage ring. My name never made it into the headlines.
Just the way I liked it.
The Pine Creek Valley Estates HOA collapsed under the weight of scandal. Most residents voted to dissolve it entirely. A few tried to save face, but the damage was done. Karen's mansion was repossessed to cover legal fees. I rebuilt, refenced,
Restored the barn.
life returned to its natural rhythm. Horses grazing at sunrise. Quiet nights under a Colorado sky. My American flag flew freely. No more letters in my mailbox. No more petty threats. Every morning, I walked to the top of my hill, raised the flag, and saluted. Not out of habit. Out of memory. Because some wars don't happen overseas. Some battles are fought in backyards, across invisible lines drawn by ego and power. And sometimes, justice doesn't arrive in a courtroom. It comes on an ATV, carrying an old soldier who just wanted peace. But peace, like freedom, sometimes has to be defended. And I was ready. Always.